I don't know about you guys, but I'm pretty wicked inspired by what's happening in Maine with these guys. And we still have 2 left. So this is just, I can't wait. We have next Aric Rogers, who's an assistant professor of regenerative biology from NBI Biological Laboratory. Aric was born in Seattle, Washington. In 2005, he received his PhD in molecular and cellular biology and carried out postdoctoral studies at the Buck Institute for Research on Aging under the guidance of Dr. Pankaj Kapai? Did I get that? Kapai. As an aside, that was not Aric's first career choice, so I highly recommend that you go ask him when we're at the reception what his first path was in science, because it was slightly different than that one. I'm just going to leave that hanging there. Aric's lab uses the small round word C. elegans to study how gene expression is remodeled under conditions that extend lifespan, particularly at points of regulation that occur after transcription. Genetic variations and environmental conditions that result in lifespan extension are also associated with delaying the onset of age-related diseases, including diabetes, cancers, and neurodegeneration. The goal of Aric's lab is to understand how life-extending interventions work across different species and apply what is learned to extend human health and longevity. Without any further ado,
Thank you to the organizers. I get to talk about one of my favorite topics, the healthy, extending the healthy years of life with new anti-aging therapeutics. We know aging is the major cause of disease, and you can pick your poison up here: cancer, neurodegeneration, cardiovascular disease. All these diseases up here and more all go up. The incidence goes up as we age. And unfortunately, people studying these individual diseases and trying to come up with therapies, the therapies that do exist, the drugs that exist, the treatments that exist, they're not interchangeable depending on your disease usually. For example, in cancer, you can't take the chemotherapy and radiation therapy and successfully apply that to treat Alzheimer's or to treat cardiovascular disease. In order for us to hit all of these things, we really have to do something at this level. And this has always been a dream, but now it's really becoming a reality. Everybody knows common sense dictates a healthy lifestyle is going to help you age better. And at no other time is that more true. Do we know that's true than right now? We understand more than we ever have why exercise and why certain foods are changing the activity of some of our genes to improve health. But then we have people like Winnie here, who started smoking when she was 7 years old. And here she is estimated having her 170,000th cigarette, and she's 100, and she's with it, and she's relatively healthy here. So is there something here? Is this just anecdotal? Is it just her winning the lottery? Or is there something underlying? She has the same genes we have. Are there small variations in her genes that are the keys to health and longevity? And we now know that there are survival programs. We've known now since the 1990s that there are survival programs we can tap into, and we can literally change one gene, slightly, one gene, and we can double the lifespan. And this started in this worm, and this is the worm we use in the lab. It's microscopic, little C. elegans. What does it have to do with you? You share all of your most important genes with this animal. And nature doesn't waste stuff that works. And you have to be able to survive, you have to grow, you have to reproduce, and you have to be able to adapt to a changing environment. Those things are preserved. Everything has its niche, but this is what's preserved. And so we've known that we could do this, and those results have been replicated now. We've taken those genes that are discovered here, and we've applied it in everything from baker's yeast to fruit flies, all the way up to mice. Okay? We can double the lifespan of mice. That's pretty close, getting pretty close to us. So we know we can tap into these survival programs, and one of the most important programs involves basically your ability, each one of your cells' ability here to make new proteins. This is the most energetically expensive process in the cell. It takes a lot of energy, and that's going to be obviously important for growth. You have to make new proteins to grow, and you also have to maintain. Once we become adults and we're post-reproductive, there's a lot of cells and tissues that just hang around and they need to stay healthy. They're not necessarily growing and dividing, but they have to stay intact. And so one of the things we know is that in order for organisms to survive to changing environments, there's a lack of food, it's too hot, the atmosphere is toxic. Those are not good growth conditions. And so an organism needs to be able to reel back those growth signals and go into this maintenance mode. And the reason Mother Nature programmed that in is because we have to be able to survive to reproduce. The good thing is those programs, those genetic programs, are also accessible once we're adults and we're done reproducing. We can tap into it after we reach adulthood and increase our ability to maintain health. And so one of the things that we can do, and we and other researchers have done, is we can go into this power plant and we can just put a clamp on it. Not completely shut it down, but we can turn it down genetically, like a dial. And what's interesting is it's not just about turning down protein synthesis that we think is the real protective thing that helps you avoid disease and helps you increase lifespan. What my lab has observed is that there's actually a change in what is manufactured. You've got a lot of genes encoding a lot of different proteins. And some of these are going to growth. But when we put the clamp down here, we see the stoichiometry of proteins that are made actually changes. And it goes into maintenance. And so with that, I will take questions.
I'm going to start with one. Can you please explain stoichiometry?
This is basically the ratio in which different proteins are made. So you might have a certain percentage of protein X and a certain percentage of protein Y, and that the ratio, the percentages of those can change even while global protein production may be decreasing or increasing. It's that stoichiometry that's the key.
Go ahead. Yep.
On the end of my DNA, I don't know ends that like shoelace things. What are they called?
Telomeres.
Telomeres, okay. I was getting shorter with time. Can you take my DNA and look how short they are? How fast have I been aging?
There's a lot of research that's gone into that, and for a while people thought telomere biology was going to be the end all of aging and regenerative potential. But we have to be careful because there's a reason that we have those shoelaces at the end of those chromosomes, because basically it's a countdown for cell division, to limit cell division. And that's important in mammals and in us because that's going to help limit incidence of cancer, which we don't want. But there may be safer ways of regenerating those ends. And the technology for that is certainly progressing. But there's a lot of other things we can do. And in this little worm that I have, there's no stem cells. Okay? Once they're adults, everything is done dividing, except in the reproductive system. Their neurons, their muscle cells, their gut cells, they're all fixed. And so we can take, and they live for 2 weeks, we can make them live 10 times longer. That's no stem cells, no regeneration. That's just strengthening the inherent ability of each one of those cells to maintain itself.
Go ahead. Yep.
Does extreme caloric
No.
does extreme caloric reduction does the same changes in stoichiometry as you're thinking?
Yeah. So obviously you can imagine if you stop eating, or if you lower how much you eat, your ability to synthesize new proteins, that's necessarily going to become restricted. The energy that you get and the nutrients that you get if you begin restricting those. And I grew up, and I remember how important it was for my grandparents that you had to eat everything on your plate. And that's because in the past, and throughout our evolution, we didn't get enough food. You know, it was a faster famine type of thing. But now we have it everywhere. And it's not always the right kind, but you can find calories on any street corner, and it's a drug, right? But the key is that you are tapping into, when you do a dietary restriction, when you fast, do a fast, or you do a couple of weeks of a diet where you're really restricting and changing your nutrient composition, we're tapping into this survival mechanism. There are people who go in for cancer therapeutics, and they've shown that if they fast them for 3 days before they expose people to these chemicals that are going to attack the cancer, that they can actually resist higher amounts and get less sick if they fast before they go. And it used to be doctors always told you, make sure you're eating, you know, you're a cancer patient, oh, you got to keep your energy up because you could get emaciated. And that's true. You definitely don't want to starve yourself to death. But a ritual fast might not be a bad thing when you're dealing with a disease or something like this.
So one of the more provocative papers that have been out is this idea of parabiosis, of fusing circulatory system between a young and old mouse. What do you think of that? Talk about
I think it's so interesting because we think about vampirism. You know, we have these stories, right? And you know, a vampire lives forever, feasts on the blood of the innocent. We've done this with mice, hooked them together, right? And not me personally, but in other labs, young mice with old mice, and the old mice experience regeneration. Unfortunately, the young mice also experience some accelerated aging. But we think that it's single component or components in the blood that we may be able to isolate. You won't have to be feasting on your, I don't know, your children or something. Your stem cells to preserve your health and longevity.
I'm going to ask one quick question that is totally not, there's not enough time. Are there any ethical concerns with this that people have brought up about, you know, do we really want to double our lifespan and deal with population issues?
Right now, we're not at risk of living forever from this. But what we can do is we can increase healthy years, and we think we can in a very short time. Potentially increase healthy years of life. Certainly, there'll need to be a cultural revolution for us to get to the point where we just live forever and what we're going to do with that.